It's not every day that we get a chance to speak to a real-life MIT graduate, but today is one of those days. Congressman Thomas Massie from the state of Kentucky joins us. Good to see you again. Congressman, how are you?
I'm doing well. It's a little cold here in Kentucky. We've got some snow here in my front yard, but we're doing well.
It's -5 outside here in Des Moines, Tom.
Oh, gee, I'll quit complaining.
Yeah, so put the violin down, all right? Okay. First of all, we understand that you have announced you are now COVID positive, so you can join the 154 million other Americans that have already been infected with this, according to CDC. Do you know what strain it is, and how are you feeling?
Well, I feel fine right now. It was like one day of allergies. Maybe it felt like a cold, and then it was over. And just as they say, out of an abundance of caution and really just curiosity, I took a test and wham, I was positive. And I was like, holy cow, well, this must be Omicron. And I tweeted this morning my announcement after I got results back from a lab instead of just a home test, because actually they're both not very reliable, but maybe having one of each confirms it a little bit more. And I just want to say I'm so thankful I have natural immunity. Like the people who've been double vaxxed and boosted claimed that, they would be no longer with us if they hadn't taken the vaccine. And that's the reason that their symptoms are so light. Well, I honestly think that the reason my symptoms are so light are twofold. Number one, it probably is that Omicron. And number two, I had COVID 2 years ago. And I believe I've got T cells and my body was primed to react to this.
Have you ever heard, and I mean, you work in government, so I mean, you have heard some straight up BS, man, of epic and deep magnitude proportions, right? Yes. But have you ever heard essentially a marketing campaign or a narrative that essentially says, you know what, man, I tested positive for gonorrhea anyway. But if I had not worn that condom, it would have been so much worse. Is that not essentially what we have seen tons of your colleagues say in the last few weeks? A lot of celebrities, media figures, others that have, despite, as Whoopi Goldberg said, I did everything they told me to do. All right. And to turn around and credit the very product that failed them. This is one of the most damnable Molekian levels of cult behavior I have ever seen. At least on second thought, I hope they're all actually just bought off spokespeople and it's not a cult, because then I can totally respect the game. All right. But because if it's what they really hope and think, that they put this much faith into a product that failed them, that's far more disturbing to me.
It's the closest thing to a cult that I have seen play out nationally like this in our lifetimes. And look, everybody that gets it, who's been vaccinated, when you point out, well, the vaccine didn't keep you from getting it. Well, they say, well, that's not what the vaccine does. The vaccine just reduces your symptoms. All right, then why the hell do we have all these vaccine mandates? If the predicate or the presumption behind these vaccine mandates is that the vaccine keeps you from catching it and spreading it, which we know it does not. So, I have to be careful on Twitter when I make my point. So I oftentimes ask a question. I asked the question recently, is anybody working on a vaccine to stop the spread of COVID?
I saw that. I retweeted that, actually.
Yes,
thought that was very funny. How come nobody thought of that? Right.
Right. And then the liberals don't know what to say when they reply to that. The other question I asked was, which of the 3 vaccines that's available in the United States is doing the best job of stopping the spread right now?
Nice.
And
nice.
By the way, I think unofficially and quietly, I think the Biden administration has a let it burn through strategy right now. Look, they reduced the period that you're supposed to stay away from people from 10 to 5 days. Okay, the science didn't change on that. That's just what, I think they know that there's going to be more spread. They can't do anything to stop it. They've acknowledged that the cloth masks don't really work. Biden said we're not going to shut down schools anymore. We're not going to have any more lockdowns. He just said that recently. And you cannot get a home test at any CVS that I have stopped at in Kentucky, Ohio, or West Virginia. I mean, they're just not available in this area.
I'm glad you went there, because I have been talking about this for the last couple of days on the show, but I would love to get the take and have our audience see and hear it from someone who's in the system and get and see what they think. Because I think we're in the midst of watching one of the more thought-provoking and intriguing political science experiments in recent American history play itself out right now. So the other day, Paul Begala went on CNN and said the problem with the Democratic Party right now is not its leaders, but its followers. And, I had kind of the knee-jerk conservative reaction, to that. I'm like, I don't know, God, brother, I've been watching your people for the last 23 months. Seems like they can do any damn thing. It's follow. They're really good at that, okay? But then I got to thinking maybe he actually is onto something here. And I wonder, he comes from another era of the Democratic Party. All right, when they really said a lot of this crazy stuff just to get elected, but didn't really mean it. It was just the whole Clintonian triangulation angle, right? And I wonder if what he was really saying is, guys, we only did this to knife Trump. It worked, all right? And now we're looking at our poll numbers, and we've got this Omicron attenuating virus that's going to give us some level of herd immunity we're all going to agree to for the first time. And that's why we said the day after Christmas, there's no federal solution. We can't shut this thing down. That's why they're telling the truth about cloth masks. That's why we suddenly are going to tell the truth about natural immunity at the CDC and the things you mentioned. It's clear there's an attempt to build a narrative here to have some form of an Omicron off-ramp from all of this. But the problem is, Congressman, within their own base is a sizable segment of people that probably do not want to let this go, that are devoted to this as a subject matter, that are angry at people that didn't go along with the jab regimen and don't want to see them essentially restored to full citizenship because they didn't take the risk that they took. A combination of factors, and how they're going to be able to try to triangulate this with the polling reality that they're currently suffering from, and the reality that a segment of their own base doesn't ever want to let this go and is closer to Joy Reid than Bill Clinton. Am I wrong? Because I think that's what's actually going on here.
You're right. I said earlier this morning that the beatings will continue until their poll numbers are in the basement, and that's where they are. So they want to let up on the beatings, but a certain segment of their constituency, which is the people who vote in their primaries, still want the beatings to continue. This has become a religion for them because there were no metrics for starting this cult. There are no metrics for ending this cult. And so they can't go and say, well, we put these things in place to do X, and we said we stop when we got to Y. Well, they never said that. So everybody's under the assumption that it's going to keep going. But you see that our friend across the pond has announced that he's dialing back on all the onerous shutdowns, lockdowns, masking, all that stuff. Here in our country, they're starting to feel it in the economy as well. And they know that you don't turn these things on and off like a light switch. And they've got so much momentum behind paying people to stay home, reducing productivity, the inflation. By the way, I want to be an equal opportunity offender here and call out my Republican friends who voted for $2 trillion for spending back when, and you had me on your show right when that was going on, because I looked at my Skype and it has the date March 30th, 2020, when you and I spoke before on your show, and you were calling them out too. You've got a lot of Republicans right now who are trying to get religion on being against big spending, but they were all for it 2 years ago when Trump rolled out the first $2 trillion and said, we don't even need to vote on this. Just nod your head and run this thing through.